Okay. Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Good morning, Penny. How are you today?
It's Friday. That feels good. I get 2 days of hanging out with my husband, who'll be home he's still going in, although his shop is closed. So it'll be good.
Yeah. Oh boy, I know that things are changing daily.
Yeah.
Um, I thought maybe we would start by talking about what we've been writing in your notebooks, our notebooks. I know what you've been writing in your notebook because I read it online this morning. So maybe we'd start by having you share that.
So this morning I got up, I had nothing. I was writing and trying to sketch a little next to former student's art. And then because I had no words and couldn't figure out where to start, I was kind of reviewing what happened in my life yesterday. And in the evening, I got on a Zoom call with two really good friends. And they're both still teaching and have both been given very different directions from administration on how to handle this virtual classroom, this online learning. One is very strict with rules and accountability, and the other is very free with connect with your kids, make sure they're okay. And so I felt this, like, the absence of leadership on this issue at the federal department, which controls millions and millions of dollars. And so I started a mess in my notebook, which was Dear Ms. DeVos up at the top, and all of the things that I wish online learning could be in this time to support. My son's home with his 2-year-old and his wife, and they're trying to work. And there are a lot of parents at home with kids who would love to have authors come on and share their thinking. And so it just kind of unraveled from there. And then I shared it with some trepidation on social media, because lots of times you get shots taken at you when you try to stand up for something. So
Well, that is a pretty radical idea, asking the Secretary of Education to actually suggest some things that we should be doing with our kids.
yeah.
I love the letter, and anybody who's watching this, I recommend that you go on Penny's Twitter feed and read that letter. I think it serves two purposes. Number one, it really, really has some really good concrete suggestions of what we should be doing. And number two, I think it's a good example of, how writing helps you vent, how writing helps you get out your frustrations as well. But I like the letter a lot, and I hope people read it.
Thanks. What have you been doing?
Well, in writing in my notebook, I don't know, a few different things. I found my favorite artist of all time, Jackson Brown,
Oh,
has the virus, and so I wrote a little bit about that and this sort of what his music has meant to me, and now it's getting personal, even though I don't know him personally. I wrote a little bit about my daughter who's struggling because one of my daughters, she recently had a breakup, and so she's single, and now she's working at home, and she's home alone, and going to be home alone for a while. So I'm kind of worried about that. And then yesterday was supposed to be opening day, and so there's a photograph of empty Dodger Stadium, and I feel a little sad about that today too, that's now become part of our new normal.
yeah. I think the loss of things that were consistent threads of spring for all of us,
Right.
that feels serious. I think my daughter and I, as we walked yesterday, were talking about how the forsythia will be in bloom soon. And that's always the first sign that spring's really coming back to the North Country. We still have mounds of snow in my front yard, but it's receding, and the grass, sorry for the Dave Matthews Band reference, but winter's snow, spring erases, one of my favorite parallel lines. It will be erased, the cold of winter, by spring, and that's a good
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. So we want to pivot today and maybe do some little lighter sharing of a couple of things that we've done in our classrooms this year. But maybe before we get there, we might look back at some of the responses we've seen in the last 24 hours on Flipgrid.
Yes, let me share my desktop. I want to show a slide from Sheila. Yesterday, she posted this, and what I love she did is she took Abandoned Farmhouse by Ted Kooser, and I will post that on the link in Padlet. And it inspired her to write Abandoned Classroom. I'm not sure if that's the title, but that was the gist of her poem that she read into the Flipgrid. And I just thought that was terrific. I'm going to spark it as well, which is if you go on Flipgrid, you'll notice that now that I spark ones once in a while that people share. And yesterday, Alyssa shared some resources to go with the talk on the trauma classroom. And I sparked that just in case people miss them. So I'm going to go back and spark Sheila's so we can listen to her poem because it was brave and I loved that.
I love that too. That's very cool. Okay, so what we thought today we would do is we would share a couple of poems or poets that we have used in our classroom this year. And we're going to start with a poet that Penny recommended.
Yeah, Marcus Jackson. This collection has been moving with me across the country, fall and winter this year in my bag. And I actually handed it to you. It might have been at NCTE and said, this one is so good. You've got to read this. He's an MFA professor at Ohio State. I think it's Ohio State. And I think he just writes in such vivid ways about things we all think about.
So before we go there, we talk about that in my classroom, we did a month-long poetry unit, a study of poetry, month-long, and taking multiple laps through poetry. But to get into that first lap, one of my considerations as a teacher, of course, is trying to teach kids the academic language of poetry. Like there's certain, you're gonna analyze and appreciate poetry, you have to know the elements of poetry. And I think dead central to that is the idea of understanding the richness and the power of metaphor. And so I took two of the poems from this collection and took them into my classes. And I'd like to share a little bit with you what I did with my kids with that. So let's go ahead and go to the first one, which is called When in Love. When in love, you're a drooling fool. You've got a mouthful of diamonds and you're smiling. Your body is a key tied to a kite bitten by lightning. Troubling memories have dug escapes from the cell blocks of your brain. You're a piece of luminous fruit yet to be bruised. You gasp the way waves at night crash, and you moan like a full moon. You're something extremely expensive carried by a clumsy kid. Spring, its warm gorge birds and redbud trees can't even keep up with your jubilee. That is what it is like to be in love. Now there's a flip side to that.
You gonna say anything about this before we move on?
Let's go ahead and let's read the flip side first. So here's the flip side.
When out of love, you're a rowboat at the center of the desert. You're tongueless and all your words blur. Your hands are blind birds. Your mind is a long ride on the wrong bus. Your sleep is brief, and the smallest sounds are rifle rounds cracking prairie air. The police have your cheek against their car hood and they are cuffing you. The sun is the sourest fruit. The stars are silver dust at the bottom of a robbed strongbox. The children playing in the alleys scream like dropped rucksacks full of glass. You're a missing miner and you dig so far. The dark holds you better than a mother.
Wow. So I bring these in at the beginning of my unit. Penny, if you back up to When in Love, because I want my kids to see the power of metaphor. Way back in the day when I wrote Deeper Reading, I talked a lot about, when we have kids read poems or books, that, we don't just want a retelling of it. We don't just want, a literary analysis of it. We want kids to get to two levels. One is the reflective level. So what? What does this poem connect with me? How does this book connect with me? And number two, we want to get to the metaphorical level, because metaphorical thinking is some of the deepest thinking that human beings do. There is a richness when you say you're a piece of luminous fruit yet to be bruised. That's what it's like to be in love. You're a clumsy kid holding on to something extremely expensive. That burrows much deeper. There's a richness there. I think metaphor, and I did a whole chapter of that in Deeper Reading about the importance of metaphorical thinking. And I think if you're going to get into poetry, you have to understand, to go back to When Out of Love, right? go ahead and advance that. You're a missing minor and you dig so far, the dark holds you better than a mother is just really, really, I think, a whole different level of understanding of poetry. So when we jump into the poetry unit, I want my kids to understand that literal language, of course, has its place, but non-literal language is where I think the richest and deepest connections come with readers. And so I take these two poems, which are, a list of a list of extended metaphors, which I'll come back to. But I use this as a jumping off point to get kids to their own metaphors. So if you go to the next slide, one of the activities that we do in class is I have to explain what the word intangible means to my students, but then we make a list on the board or on the overhead, the Elmo, of things that are intangible. So, friendship, love, patriotism, etc. And then we make a list of things that are tangible. And then the exercise to get kids to create their own metaphors is that sentence below. So you pick one item from the intangible list and one item from the tangible list, and you try to make a connection. So I'll ask you, go ahead, Penny, pick one from anyone from the two lists there.
Hatred is like gum.
Okay, so hatred is like gum because you sometimes chew on it way too long.
Ooh, good one.
Right? Yeah, when kids go, ooh, that's when you have something going on in the classroom, right? Friendship's like a driver's license because you have to pass a test. Mm-hmm. Or, jealousy is like a backpack because it can get very heavy. Ooh. And so we have kids make these connections across. And then if you go back real quickly to either of the Marcus Jackson poems, those are a list of metaphors. And I think that's kind of an interesting exercise. But if you come back to my exercise, once we create a metaphor, that sentence down at the bottom, then I shift and I get kids to understand the difference between a metaphor and an extended metaphor. So that sentence down below gets changed to blank is like blank because blank and blank and blank.
Nice.
So what was the one you picked again? Hatred is like gum?
Yeah.
So hatred is like gum because you chew on it long. You can choke on it. Yeah. Eventually the flavor will run out. Let's do a different one. Friendship is like a driver's license because you have to pass a test. Eventually it may expire.
Once you've earned it, it gives you lots of freedom.
Right. And so we go from matching A to B to matching A to B to B to B to B, so that they do extended metaphors. So like the Marcus Jackson poems we looked at are kind of lists of metaphor, but here I'm aiming to also get kids to extend metaphor. They have a lot of fun doing that. Once they play around with that, then I show them this Sylvia Plath poem, which is actually called Metaphors. And my kids, it's kind of a difficult poem at first, right? I'm a riddle in 9 syllables, an elephant, a ponderous house, a melon strolling on 2 tendrils, oh, red fruit, ivory, fine timbers. This loaf's big with its yeasty rising, money's new minted in this fat purse. I'm a means, a stage, a cow and calf. I've eaten a bag of green apples, boarded the train, there's no getting off. And so I have kids play with this idea. Okay, I give them the metaphor first, but I don't tell them what the topic is, right? And they get in groups and they try to figure out, okay, these are all metaphors that add up to what? And usually somebody eventually will get it. And then everybody goes, oh, because it's really a poem about her being pregnant, right? And so I've eaten a bag of green apples, that's the morning sickness, and I'm on a train. There is no getting off. It just I think metaphorically teaches kids just the richness of the kind of thinking that comes via metaphorical thinking. So You're going to share a poem here in a moment, but I just thought, if we're going to talk about poetry with our kids, maybe spend a little time getting them to understand the power of metaphor.
So is Andrea Sisso part of this poem?
We screenshotted that so just 5 minutes ago. So I don't believe so. That is incorrect. So it's a Sylvia Plath poem. It must be right. So that's an error on my.
So I did not get it. I sat there playing with it. What could this be? What could this be? I don't know that I've ever looked at this poem before. I love this poem.
Yeah.
Powerful.
I'm a riddle at 9 syllables.
I love the yeasty rising. Like you're just, this fat purse. Anyone who's been pregnant gets it. So I want to share a book that I adore called Martin Rising. And it's a requiem for a king. It's the story of Martin Luther King Jr.'s last months of life. And Andrea Davis Pinkney was one of the choices last year for the Book Club Foundation Summer Book Club, her book, The Red Pencil, because she is a prolific writer. The stuff across genre, this one is a requiem. It's almost like historical writing in verse. So it's all poems. And then Rhythm Ride, which is, as you know, one of my favorite books, is the road trip through Motown, a nonfiction book about Motown. She has so many picture books. She's just an incredible, incredible voice in writing. But this book offers lessons in illustration as well. And that's her husband, Brian, who does all of the paintings and illustrations that go with. And it's the weather is like this constant theme. But the reason I wanted to zero in on two things from that book is that I like to teach kids craft moves. And in a middle school recently, I took in Andrea's work and said, let's just look at what's happening with the power of three. So from Martin Rising, Gwen has made fixins for the soul, roast beef, candied yams, turnip greens. And I get kids to just turn and talk. What do you notice? One sentence, just like Jeff Anderson's work, right? Let's just look at what happens. What does the colon do? There's 3 things in a list. Why are they in that order? What does the order imply about how it will be read or understood by readers? Why is there no and after yams? And then struggling now to make sense of sudden lightning. Daddy, snatched, plucked, stolen in a blink by the hand of a man filled with hate. That example, those 3 verbs are so powerful. There's the loveliness of sound, snatched, plucked, stolen, but there's also that idea again of why that order. That's one of the things I love about the power of 3 is not only it's simple to spot, but then you have all these questions you can ask that you don't have the author sitting with you to answer. So you can't do it wrong. But to me, snatched and plucked, both of those are very similar, but stolen has more power. Daddy stolen by the hand of a man. So I like that it's last. And it made me wonder if in the first example, the turnip greens are the food that Gwen makes that is the favorite, right? Because it seems always the last thing is the most important. So there are 2 other examples, one from Boycott Blues, which is a terrific picture book, and then from The Red Pencil. Well, listen good, because here it is. Steady, slow, a story told with steps, with tired feet, with tired bones. Those 3 fragments, right? Parallel structure, landing on bones hard. And I think that repetition, any kid could try. Mama and I talk easily about most things. How best to stack kindling, when sugarcane is ready to harvest, ways to peel potatoes. But there's one thing Mama will not allow me to address with her: school. It's a young girl who can't go to school. And what I love is, most things, colon, here comes a list, right? You teach kids, that's one way we use the colon, here comes a list. But those 3 things, again, kids could then say, my best friend and I talk easily about most things, colon. My best friend and I don't talk about colon, and getting them to play with that. And the next move for me with kids is, okay, now today in your independent reading, if you notice the power of 3, put it in your notebook, put it on an index card, and at the end of class, share out some of those power of 3 moments.
Love that. And so easily adaptable into the classroom. I love it.
Yeah, it's easily adaptable to just about anything we teach, right? If you read commentary, I mean, if we open the pages right now and read about what everybody's writing about the coronavirus, you're going to find the really terrific opinion writers that are out there using the power of three again and again. Leonard Pitts Jr., one of our favorites,
Yes.
that amazing piece, Cruel as It Is, The World Goes On. Another one that I will link on our Padlet. I think that you're going to find the power of three all over it.
Well, and it also reinforces an important kind of reading skill, reading like a writer.
Yes.
Um, those three things we always talk about: read, analyze, emulate.
Yeah.
Read, what does it say? Analyze, how is it said? Emulate, what did that writer do that I can do? Standing next to somebody who does it well and trying to emulate it is so, so powerful.
I
Love
agree.
those.
I like standing next to you, Kelly, a powerful
Oh,
writer,
yeah.
and figuring out how to write better. You laugh, but it is so true. So
Well, what a nice thing to say as somebody who's one of the best writers I know. That's high praise, so I appreciate that. So
yeah, that seems a
if,
stretch.
if it's okay with you, that's a good way for me to end the week.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to end the week. And I really am hoping that either the teachers listening will go on Flipgrid and post their own power of threes that they find. Because wouldn't it be cool if we ended this today with a whole collection of things, or post a favorite poem? Because we could
Or
have so
yeah,
many.
or a poetry idea and what you've done with it in the class. That would be really, really
Exactly.
cool. I know we're not going to tip our hand too much here, but I know we have at least one very interesting poet who's going to be a guest next week. And so
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to
I'm
coming
so
back to
excited about that. And we have homework reading for everyone, remember? Because on
Yes.
Monday, we're going to talk about The Curse of Helicopter Teaching, which we just published in ASCD's Educational Leadership. So I'm going to put a link to that poem and just encourage everybody to read that short article before we record and they listen to us on Monday.
All right. Well, have a good weekend. Enjoy your 2 days. Have you seen those memes like, where am I going to go? Where's my vacation going to be this weekend? Is it going to be the backyard or the patio or the living room? Like, where's my new territory? So good luck as you explore
Exactly. Be
your
safe,
home.
be well. Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for joining us.